Let's talk to Heidi Alexander, Labour MP, also co-chair of the Labour campaign for the single market and a leading supporter of Open Britain. Thank you so much for joining us, Heidi.
No problem. Good morning, Julia.
How hopeful are you that you're going to get to keep Britain in the single market? You're co-chair of this specific Labour campaign to keep Britain in the single market after we leave the EU. Now you've heard the transition deal that's being offered by the EU.
Well, I think that the transition deal in terms of staying in the single market and customs union is the only sensible way of dealing with the next couple of years. I mean, businesses have been saying over the last few years, what on earth are we going to do since the referendum when it comes to our trading arrangements? And the Prime Minister said, well, we're only going to insist upon one set of changes for businesses. And so keeping the same customs arrangements, the fact that we are going to still comply with the rules and regulations so that we can sell easily into Europe and sell to European consumers and businesses. That all makes sense. But I think the issue is this just delays the really difficult decision about what do we do in the longer term. And I think the problems that people talked about with respect to, say, a cliff edge for businesses occurring in 2019, and the transition just delays that really 18 months to 2 years. And what I want to see is over the longer term, the government prioritising the economic interests of our country, protecting the jobs of my constituents and their livelihoods. I think in order to do that, in order to win that vote in Parliament, the Labour Party really needs to lead the way on this in terms of saying, let's stay in the single market and a European customs union for the long term. And that's completely possible to do.
Well, you say it's completely possible to do, except there isn't a mandate for that from the European Union referendum, or indeed from the last general election. Your own official Labour Party policy is set out by, the last time I looked, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn was very clear that you had to leave the single market and the customs union to meaningfully leave the European Union. You know as well as I do, there was a vote in June 2016, very clearly. Everybody on the Remain and the Leave side, apart from I think like two people, certainly the official campaign on both sides, were very clear that leaving the EU meant leaving the single market and the customs union. Is this not an attempt, your organisation, whether well-meaning or not, to actually undermine the outcome of a democratic vote?
Not at all, Julia. I mean, I think you are interpreting the outcome of that Brexit referendum. The words single market or customs union were not on the ballot paper back in 2016. It was a binary choice between staying within the European Union or coming out.
But Heidi Alexander, the then Prime Minister, who's leading the Remain campaign, the then Chancellor, pretty much every other leading figure, Nick Clegg in the Remain campaign, made it very clear in clip after clip. You can see them on YouTube, video clip after video clip, saying quite clearly that leaving the EU meant leaving the single market, meant leaving the customs union. We were told it would be a terrible thing to do, but they said that's what would happen. The leading campaign for Vote Leave were very, very, very clear that it was going to be me leaving the. Well, it's not an no. But Heidi Alexander, it is not an interpretation of leaving the European Union to say we would mean leaving the single market and the European customs union. It was a clear stated fact.
Well, no, I think that's your fact and that's your reality.
So I'm making that up. So you're saying that neither Remain nor Leave ever mentioned that, because you know for a fact that that's not true.
Listen. We can trade clips, can't we, on YouTube and Google?
Yeah.
And say, if you look at Owen Paterson, saying who's a very, very outspoken person during the referendum campaign, saying Tory minister, saying that only a madman would leave the single market. We had Daniel Hannan on there.
People have no. Heidi Alexander, there are lots of people who have lots of different opinions. Because you're not accepting. Heidi, this is how it works on No Nonsense Breakfast with me. No. We don't get to debate what facts are. We can give an opinion on the facts. You're saying to me that I'm interpreting the outcome of the European Union referendum. I'm not. We were told by the leaders of the referendum campaign on both sides, not another MP, the leader of the Remain campaign and the leaders of the Leave campaign, we were told specifically that leaving the European Union meant leaving the single market and leaving the customs union.
Julia,
and now you're saying...
Can I get a word in edgeways here? Could I just get a word?
But you cannot deny that as a fact. We can't have a debate if you're going to make up your own facts.
If I'm not making up my own facts, if you think about what the debate on the referendum focused on, in the lead up to that vote in June 2016, we had pictures of Nigel Farage stood in front of refugees coming from war-torn
That wasn't the official Vote Leave
countries.
campaign.
But
It wasn't the official Vote Leave campaign.
Sticks in people's mind. That is the image that sticks in people's mind, irrespective of whether it was the official Vote Leave campaign or not. That is what people remember. People remember
What's that got to do with anything?
Leaflet that people. Well, it's got a lot to do with everything, because you're saying that people made their minds up on the single market and customs union when there was a toxic debate about immigration. When the official Vote Leave leaflet came through my door, there was a map on the back of that leaflet suggesting that Turkey was immediately about to join the European Union.
No, that's official government policy. You know, it's official under Labour and Tories. It's official government policy for Turkey to join the EU.
I remember government ministers
was that a disputable fact?
I remember government ministers appearing on television, Penny Mordaunt, lying about the fact that we would not have a veto over whether Turkey joins the EU. That whole debate in advance of 2016 was one that was based on mistruths and misunderstanding.
All right, let's try and move on from this. Okay, you're saying that you're part of a campaign that you want to keep us in the single market. After this report we've had, it's been leaked to BuzzFeed, of an internal Treasury economist and civil servants prepared a report for DEXU, the Brexit ministry, saying there's all going to go to hell in a handcart because of this. Is that for you? Is that a killer argument, or would you understand why a lot of people who were Leave voters who were subject to Project Fear about 500,000 job losses, massive recession, even by now, just simply by voting Leave, not Brexit, but actually the actual vote itself? Do you understand why perhaps an awful lot of people won't believe those bad tidings of what will happen if we leave?
Well, nothing's changed as yet because we haven't left the European Union. What we have seen is prices going up in the shops because of the devalued pound. We've seen our credit rating as a country go down. We're seeing businesses considering moving jobs abroad. Now, those reports that have been leaked out of the Department for Exiting the European Union show the different economic impact of different types of Brexit. So Brexit is just not one thing or the other. You could leave the European Union and default to World Trade Organization terms, the hardest of Brexits. You could have a free trade deal with Canada, which is sort of like a sort of middle option, I guess. And then the best option, if we are going to leave the European Union, in my view, is to stay as close as possible. And that means remaining in the single market and remaining part of a European customs union. And so when those reports point to an 8% loss in GDP if you crash out on that hard and destructive WTO-type Brexit...
the one that the rest of the world exists on?
Well, no.
I mean, you realise that most of the world exists on that WTO
I know
tariff.
That Jones McGrory will talk to you at great length about the way that trade works around the country, around the world. What I would say, though, is, if you think back to the Treasury reports that came out even before the referendum, and they talked about over the next 15 years, the hardest form of Brexit costing our country £45 billion. Yes. That is over a third of the budget of the NHS. No,
come on! You know it was laughable because it was predicated on us not increasing any trade with any other part of the world, wasn't it? I mean, it was an absolutely laughable premise.
Okay. No, it's not laughable.
That's not laughable. You think that leaving the EU, we won't increase our trade with other countries when we stop having to have tariffs imposed by the EU on our trade with those other countries? And how could you not think that was a laughable premise?
With that point? Can I deal exactly with that point with you? There's been credible research done that shows that if you replace our membership of the single market with a free trade agreement with the EU, that over the long term, that is likely to reduce trade by 22%. If you sign new free trade agreements with 10 of the countries that are at the top of Liam Fox's list to do deals with, places like America, Canada, South Africa, Russia, Indonesia, India, you add all of those together, and that is likely to increase trade by 5%. So you lose 22% of trade by doing this new free trade agreement with the EU, but you only increase it by 5%.
Okay. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry, Heidi, we're going to have to leave it there. Sorry. Thank you very much indeed, Heidi Alexander, Labour MP, co-chair of the Labour campaign for the single market. As I've said, I just don't know. I really don't know what anyone thinks was leaving the EU meant if it didn't mean leaving the single market. And those 4 pillars of the single market, of course, immigration, we could talk about that for hours, as you know.